Welcome to another flight video. This is something. This is gonna be like a pet project I've been kind of wanting to do, and this is start going over like different airport and networks, I guess, around the world that don't just have like one major airport service in the area. Like good example here in the U.S., like in Chicago, you got like, actually better one would be New York. Let's look at New York. You got JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia. A lot of like international go to JFK, but you have several that go through Newark. United's World or United has a huge hub in Newark, and you have like LaGuardia, which is more domestic, but has a very has a prevalent Delta hub. And one network I've always found interesting is the Tokyo area with Narita and Haneda. And partially, the main reason is actually more the history behind the two, and kind of like also it's not, I guess you say impact, but like how past U.S. Airlines also had a huge influence and hubs there, and somewhat still today, but in a different perspective, which I want to go over. And I originally did record this a while ago, but it was right before the Japan update, so I want to do it again with the Japan update. And hopefully this time I'll get it done. I've been trying to record it. It crashed last time. I've been doing some modding and stuff. I hope this one will go smoother. Well, I'm probably gonna do a little different. I probably won't go through Central Tokyo. I'm gonna bypass and go straight to Hanada. And I'm doing a slower plane, so it'll be a little long, but I have a lot to talk about. And I decided to start at Narita. And I guess the main reason is this is the um, I want to kind of go over why this airport's here, and then kind of like the pluses and minuses of Narita and with Hanada as well. Because for international travelers that probably listen to this, you may not know that there is, despite there might be both routes going to each airport, there are going to be some differences between location and times that you should be well aware of. But let's start with Narita and going back to its roots. Well, actually, we need to look at Hanada, then go back into Narita. So Hanada is the older airport, and that was the original international airport in the region. And I'm talking about like post World War II, kind of the beginning of Japan's rising from the fires of World War. Basically, the economic miracle where they started growing again as a country and their economy. So like you're thinking the 50s, this is really the beginning of the golden age of air travel. And a good example, Pan American had their hub at Hanada, Pacific Hub, but it was a hub nonetheless. And at the time, I think it was the Boeing 707s that flew there, but you know planes didn't go as far as they can today, or last as long, or as efficient, I should say, as either. Which I go to in a second how the 747 plays in that. So so basically, it was a great stepping stone because it was basically the easternmost Asian country, and it was becoming a global economic. I wouldn't say like superpower, but an economic power nonetheless. A G7 member. So and then that's where it kind of became why it was a very good place for like Pan Am, who was mostly international travel, to put their Asian hub there. So when you flew to Asia, let's say you're going to Manila, you're going to connect at Hanada, or let's say Tokyo, and we'll kind of go back into the airports in a second. So that's kind of where the history is, and then Northwest Orient, which became Northwest Airlines, they were very heavily influenced in Asia as well. And again, they had a hub, I think, also Hanada, and then eventually Narita. But but over time, the airport got too big, or sorry, things just got too, the economy growing, the traffic demand became too big at the time for how where that airport was. It was old. It didn't have the space. It didn't expand. It didn't really able to expand at the time, and it was really complicated to kind of keep it going. So then this where it basically became to realize we need to build a new modern. I mean, it was built in the 70s, but modernish airport that can handle our rise in global traffic. And this is at the same time when these plans start coming up. It was shortly before the 747 came into production in 1969, and that was a game changer. That allowed a lot more international flights, long haul flights, and but the downside with that, especially with you think about like where Hanada is at the time before the current version. It's right next to the central Tokyo. A lot of people live near there, and you have very loud 747 jets. Just let that finish. So, so basically there's also that as well, the noise pollution. So this is where the Narita comes in. However, this also became a very controversial airport for the time as well, for a few reasons. So in the first one I'm going to show you, it's just kind of, we can close this and this. I'm doing a morning flight. It was actually hoping to be like sunrise, but it looks like it's a little high when I'm doing this. You see it's a very rural area. Well, that's where the first controversy. So how they really got the land was basically their version of eminent domain. I don't know the legal thing. I've tried to look more into the legality of it, but basically it is, it's basically government basically said acquire the land almost by force. And in '66, Japan was kind of going through a time of a younger generation that was a lot more progressive and actually very even radical. Even not just for Japan, this kind of really fit with the kind of like the global youth movement you saw around the world, including the U.S. with protests and so forth, especially with Vietnam, because Japan, was not actively involved with Vietnam, but the Okinawa base was a huge, basically, deployment for Vietnam, and obviously with U.S. foreign policy playing a big role here, it really, was a lot of controversy that rose to, a very active young movement. And with that, with local residents, student activists, and left-wing political parties form a popular resistance group known as Shinrizuka Shibayama Union to oppose the airport. I apologize. I'm doing my best to pronounce these words. And, there was a lot of protests. There was a lot of controversy. And not just like little protests like sign. They were actually like, they got a little violent. For Japan, it wasn't like a full-blown riot. But, you had police arrests, students, these protesters wearing like hard helmets and stuff. There was a lot of controversy for this airport. And sadly, well, I say sadly, but, this was at the time, but eventually they get the airport built. So the first terminal building they finally built around, I think, in the mid-70s. And then the airport officially commenced operations in 1978. So that's when the airport got built. Actually went pretty high. We can lower this a bit. So anyway, so that's when the airport was built and kind of opened up. And just to get a sense of the airport, you can kind of tell it was built in different phases. I don't know which one's the older terminal. I want to say it might be this one, but I could be wrong. It's very modernized. If you go through there, it doesn't feel like a dated airport. They've done a good job keeping it modernized. But anyway, so unfortunately, this airport kind of brought in controversy, and they had security issues for a while. A few things. I've read there was a couple, they call it terrorist attacks, but a couple employees died from basically violence, towards people at the airport. And also, and it's kind of funny to think about in today's world, but this airport, when they had to open it because of all the issues they have with the protests and students and potential violence, they put barricades around the airport, like the big metal fences you see today in every airport. But for the time, it sounded like, from what I was reading, that I wouldn't say it was unheard of, but it was very uncommon, and for a country like Japan. Nowadays, they all would do this just due to global travel and protection. Sadly, 9/11, and unfortunately, other terrorist attacks over the years, like plane hijackings in the '70s and so forth. So, but anyway, that's what kind of led the airport, and this kind of really became the main gateway, especially during its really peak bubble economy, if you think about it. Like in the '70s and '80s, when it was just really growing rapidly, and you got all this international business travel of Northwest and Pan Am, and went right through this airport. So, and actually I have a little more. So in '86, this is where it gets interesting. So speaking of that, as I'm talking about, because of how strong the yen became and how, economically powerful, and people had a lot of spending money, their capacity became really, they were reaching capacity very quickly at this airport. And they ended up completing 2 more runways. which I don't know which one's the original one. I'm assuming this is one of the older ones, and the one over there is a newer one per se. This doesn't look like it was a runway, but it's hard to say because I could kind of tell. Yeah, these were added over time. But anyway, so I'm gonna fly over a couple more times, and I will start heading towards Haneda. Um, they could yeah, so they could illegally force a sail to land, but decide not to do so because of fears of more violence. In 91, Narita was handling 22 million passengers a year, despite only having design capacity of 13 million at the time, which is pretty astonishing because now I think it's in the 30 millions, but that's a different story. Yeah, so they did Terminal 2. Now, this is funny. So, fortunately, when they finally got to Terminal 2, which, it's one of these two buildings, and they're big terminals. You can tell they're not small. It can handle a lot of planes. It's in 92, which, unfortunately, their bubble economy popped by then. But they did expand the runways in the 2000s. And in 2011, they allowed simultaneous lanes A and B runways, which is always kind of interesting. You've seen other airports, like O'Hare's had some weird rules like that too with their time slots and when you could take off, what runways could be used at a given time. But I think partially due to land noise and safety reasons. But I think if over time with better technology and air traffic control systems, it's made it more feasible to handle it. And then the funniest thing, and this is where you're going to start going to the pluses and minuses of Narita, is they finally in 2010 opened up the rapid railroad system. Now, to show you the first issue of Narita is, zoomed a little too far. This is your central Tokyo right here. It's like 65, 70 miles east of central Tokyo. Now, not from like the suburbs. I mean, you got Chiba. This is Chiba Prefecture, which has a lot of suburbs of Tokyo. But that's your first issue. It was way out there. Thankfully, this new rail line makes it a lot more feasible. It's a very rapid rail line. It's covered by the Japan Rail Pass. It'll get you in the central Tokyo, I think, within the hour. Obviously, depending where you're going in Tokyo after that, then you have to figure it out. But at least now you have a manageable approach to get in and out of Tokyo, which you didn't have before. So that's the first issue. That was really the main issue. It's just way out there, along with the historical controversy, which, I'm sure maybe with some locals and stuff really turned them off ever flying through here. That's just more. That's just more speculation. Just knowing, sometimes that controversy takes years to get past and over with. So. But that said, kind of go into its importance of the airport before we're going to start flying to Haneda. And this will be my last flyover. Just to give you one more sense of the airport. Well, that just popped in. Makes me wonder if that's going to be one of the real airlines popping out soon. So, you can tell, it may not look huge, but trust me, it's huge. I've been there. It can handle the, it's definitely not a small one. Plenty of amenities there. A lot of good restaurants. Your airline lounges are there, which I'm going to go into here in a minute, and all that. But anyway, let's talk about the modern Narita and where it fits in the system. And that will lead me into Haneda. So Narita it's one of the two international airports in the Tokyo region. Overall, it's still predominantly international and does most of the international traffic compared to Haneda. However, Haneda is on the rise in that regard, but anyway, we will go into that later and kind of where that fits in the story. But right now we're with Narita, it's still an ANA and Japan Airlines hub. Those are your primary hubs there now. Now, before the last 10 years, it used to also have a Northwest hub and the United hub. The United hub was actually taken from Pan Am. When Pan Am went through its struggles in the 80s and basically really was on their downfall and their way out, they sold the Pacific division and United picked it up. So that's why United has a very strong Pacific influence for a U.S. airline. And Delta to an extent as well, but probably more so than... Well, now they're probably the big three do, because there used to be there used to be a lot more legacy carriers, so that's where it got a lot more divisive. But I say United's still one of the bigger U.S. Presence in Asia, especially because they got a hub in Guam as well. and provide a lot of flights around Micronesia and to and from Hawaii, compared to other U.S. airlines like Delta and American in that regard. Anyway, I digress. So, so that's your primary hubs. United has basically dehubbed this airport mostly. I think sometimes they say it's quote a hub slash focus city. It's a little unique. It's probably actually no, it's not anymore, and because they moved some flights to Haneda. But before that, they used to have inter-Asia flights. So like you could have flew United from like Tokyo to Seoul, Korea, for example, or Manila. I think Delta did have one from here to Manila, but that might be discontinued right now due to COVID, or maybe got on its way out. I'm not sure because obviously everything that's happened in the last year has really changed the game for the time being. So, but anyway, so really, so if you're flying into Narita, it's going to be your main gateway for most airlines. I think the only one that may be solely at Haneda might be Lufthansa, and the reason is because they have code shares with ANA. So ANA, and this is where we're going to go into the airlines. So like United, Lufthansa, and ANA and the Star Alliance. And there's other airlines in there, but those, let's say the big three, or Air Canada. I'll throw Air Canada in there. So like think of those four. They're in the Star Alliance. So for example, you can book an airline, you can book a flight on United, but it may be on an ANA flight from Chicago to Narita. That's actually what's going to happen to me next year. I'm flying in and out of Narita twice. Well, into Narita and out of Narita when I go to Japan. If things go smooth, if I'm able to go later this year. Won't speculate on that at this time. So, and that's the same with Japan and American, British Airways, Japan Airlines are in the One World Alliance. Delta's kind of the odd man out right now. They basically are partners in SkyTeam, which is Korean Airlines. So they really done a more focus moving from Japan into Seoul, and have used Seoul as more of kind of like inter-Asia. Well, I would say inter-Asia, but kind of like their Asia jump, where you go into and out Asia, and then kind of use their partners at SkyTeam, as I said, Korean Air, to get around Asia. Excuse me, I got water, so I'm just trying to stay hydrated. So that's kind of where they come in. But anyway, so, and now you kind of go into, anyway, so yeah, I was saying, so like, and that's where you kind of really start playing the time flights as how not it, because like, sometimes the flights would be a little cheaper into Narita, but then you got to look at the transportation costs to and from the airports. They kind of show you it's way out there in a pretty remote, rural, really actually rural part of Japan almost. And then you got to look at your airlines and time slots. So the reason I'm flying ANA to and from Narita is because their flight will land around like 2, 3 o'clock mid-afternoon, leaving me plenty of time to get to my hotel and enjoy the day still. And when I'm flying out, it'll be in the early evening, like around 5 o'clock. Plenty of time just to not rush, get to the airport, enjoy the lounge, and so forth. While the flights of Haneda, when I've done that, United ANA flew me to Chicago at 10:30 in the morning, which is not bad. But we were up by like 4:35 a.m. to get everything going, because it's an international flight. You got to check in, go through customs, and get ready for all that. So, and then the same issue that their time slots at Haneda will force you mostly leave you in the mid-morning, and a lot of the flights will arrive you really early morning or mid-late, or very kind of mid-late evening. And during the day, it's mostly all domestic, which I'll go into in a minute. But anyway, so that's kind of the Narita. It's your ANA, Japan Airlines, still a lot of international airlines that go there, and your more low-cost carrier we go through there, like Cebu Pacific from the Philippines. That's a low-cost carrier. They will fly through here, Narita, and not Haneda, just due to the cost would be more at Haneda. So we're going to go into Haneda as we kind of fly towards to it. I still another 10-ish minutes till we're there. Maybe a little longer. You kind of see the bays up ahead. Yes. This is not live weather. It's cloudy today, so I just put it partly cloudy to get a few clouds and some sun. Hopefully things go smoothly. But anyway, so Haneda, as I mentioned, was the original airport from about World War II to 1978. And at the time, this airport, actually, we can actually zoom in right through here. Yeah. To give you a perspective, when I've looked up original I'm trying to zoom. There we go. This will work. So when I looked at original this airport, it was nothing like this. Like the original terminal building was like here, and I think they had this runway and maybe this or something over here. So yeah, there's Asiana going into Narita. But anyway, and then this was kind of like weird. It's like a swamp. It was just not used, but it wasn't. It was like water in there. So I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't find any information on that. And this wasn't here. This was actually built later. You see, this is definitely a man-made land creation for the airport. Oh, I see. That's Asiana talking. But anyway. You see there's live airplanes going out of Narita, Haneda right now. But so that was kind of also another reason why they moved to Narita. This is in the 60s. They didn't really think of this. They didn't know what to do with this. And the terminal building was very old and there was no room. Now that's eventually going to change. So basically in the mid 80s, they were already thinking, all right, we got Narita operational. But as I said, they were already reaching capacity. They were like, they're like 6-7 million over capacity at the time, and they're like, well, what about Haneda? How can we get that back into play? It was very popular domestically. It was still a very busy airport domestically, but it wasn't used internationally. And they were even thinking about, okay, how can we get it back there? So the landfill, whatever it was next to it, they filled that up. They started to begin to fill that up. In '93, they finally replaced the old terminal building with a new terminal building, and it's currently, I think it's Terminal 1 now. And that's Japan Airlines main base. Again, all these buildings are nice, well kept. I've been through the new international terminal. Then in '97, they finally put new runways in '97, 2000. I can't tell you which is which. I just know in the old diagrams, I think this one was here before, or maybe this one. Like, and one of these is the older one, and then they built the others. So, but anyway. In 2007, this is where the game changed. Haneda was given permission to reopen international routes and time windows. And these are the time windows I mentioned earlier. And according to what I found out, most international flights can depart between 8:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. and arrive between 6 and 8:30 a.m. The airport also allowed departure routes between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Overnight, it's a 24-hour airport where Narita will shut down. But that said, I have to depart in the mid-morning, so there's like a little window there. But after about mid-morning, what I've seen, it's pretty locked to just domestic flights. And there are domestic flights on a Narita, but mostly for connection purposes. Like when I flew there, we had a connecting flight to Osaka Itami, which is the secondary older airport in the Osaka area. Very similar story to this airport, or this situation. But anyway, we flew, that plane took off around 5:30, 6 o'clock. So we got in like, mid-afternoon and, had about a 2.5-hour layover. Kind of wish I would go away. And it's kind of the same thing, then you end up connecting. But then in 2010, they opened up the international terminal, and that was the beginning of the reopening of international flights. And it's continued to grow since then. They've added more expansion and windows. I mentioned the mid-morning that I flew out of. And this is where it gets very interesting. It isn't just for ANA Japan. This is where like United American, British, Lufthansa, Qantas, and Air France fly into. And they plan to continue to grow in the future, especially with, ideally it was originally partially the Olympics, but they look beyond the Olympics. There's still going to be a lot of global economic travel. Again, this is pre-COVID, but even, it's going to happen again. Things will recover. Things will certainly come back normal. So, but anyway, going back into this, so that's where it kind of plays, and that's where it gets a little confusing now. So like United, for example, their Chicago route doesn't fly anymore to Narita, just to Haneda, even though that's like the hub. But they still have routes to both airports, I think from like Los Angeles and Newark. Now what they can do, this is interesting, I was reading about this, airlines are not supposed to do that unless, and they put a loop though here, you have a code share flight. So that way they don't abandon the Narita airport just for a nod because of how close it is. So because of that, ANA's got a route to O'Hare from Narita to keep that route open. And then United could also do Haneda, just do the Haneda route along with ANA's got Haneda as well. So not ANA does both, and United just focuses on Haneda. But then at least with the Narita route for ANA, that's a code share flight and like they're partners, so that keeps it kind of going for the time being. So so anyway, that's where you really got to start looking into because the times are going to be very differently, and I feel like the Hanada one's a lot more restrictive. Obviously on purpose, and this has to be, but it's something you got to be mindful about. I mean, the good news are a lot closer. Like we're going over. Oh, I forgot this region. This is not Tokyo. This is actually a different region. We're almost in the Tokyo. I think right around here, we officially crossed in the Tokyo prefecture. But anyway, so that's something you got to just be very mindful when you look at both airports. Especially kind of like what you need, especially if you're really valuable at the time. Like, since I'm going on vacation, for the Olympics, hopefully, I'll have the time. We have the Japan Rail Pass, and it's like, I'd rather have, get in mid-afternoon and basically get out, early evening over flying in like at 9 o'clock at night and having to fly at 10 a.m. I'd rather have those few extra hours. And you just got to be mindful of that. And at the same time, with your airlines, if you're taking if you're like an Asian, if you're a traveler in Asia and you're coming in from, like Philippines, okay, if you fly Philippine Air, yeah, you can go to Hanada. I believe they fly there. But if you want to take a cheaper airline like CB Pacific, you're only gonna be able to go to Narita. There's no other choice. So, that's and that's why I kind of make it with a lot of these networks. You see a lot of complications like that. You see that in London as well with Gatwick and Heathrow. And I've been through that as well. And I've personally been through this as well. And it's kind of why I want to do a little pet project just from my travels and so forth. But anyway, so that's kind of the bulk of my kind of like presentation, kind of going over this different stuff. Especially the history. I just thought it was very interesting just how, like, I've seen airports when they kind of lose the status, they're outdated, they don't ever gain it back. Like, I believe Midway is the old airport in Chicago. And it's a good sized airport, it's Southwest hub, but it's nothing like it was like 50 years ago. And now, here's the main airport. That's the United American hub. And it's the international hub. Midway's never going to be Midway really doesn't have the size or capacity to be like a secondary national airport. But yet you go to Japan, they got two of them. And to give you a perspective, I think obviously not this year or last year, so this would be pre-COVID, Haneda had about 85 million passengers. Still mostly domestic, but I think about a quarter of the traffic was international. And then you had Narita had like another 35, 40 million passengers, I believe. More so international. But again, same. But again, you combine the two, you're having about 120 to 30 million passengers in the two airports. That shows you just how valuable these two airports are. Because it isn't just domestic Japanese traffic or going to Japan only. It's a jumping stone for Asia. You see a lot of flights, you go over there, ANA, you're going to go to Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, you may connect there unless you really want to pay the exorbitant price to do a 17-hour flight in New York. So, and granted, for business travel, they will pay for that price. But for like, the tourist traveler, what? Your goal is to be more flexible and get the best deal you can for you and your family. So yeah, anyway. So just a lot to kind of digest and think about. As I kind of wrap this video, I'm not going to do over Central Tokyo. That's when it crashed last time, honestly. So I'm hoping being on the outskirts of these. I've added a. So the reason I may think it may crash, which I got to mess around with, I added a mod. So in the marketplace, it should be safe. It was well rated. Just enhanced the Tokyo skyline, the buildings. So and I saw some changes. They look better. It looks like they put a lot more of the buildings, even more so in the Japan update, which I think did a really good job. So I'm just kind of, it's a cool city to fly around. There's so much to see. And in the original video I did, I actually talked a lot about that. It'd be in like an hour, well over an hour. This one I keep it well, at least under an hour for sure. Obviously, this is taking a little longer with this plane compared to some of the other ones, but I think it's going smoothly. So we can. I just don't want to pick up too much speed here. Not speed, so I don't want to pick up too much altitude. Yeah, I mean we're over I mean, we're over halfway. I mean, it's a 70-ish, 80-mile flight here. It's not like it's 20 minutes or 20 miles. But yeah, so I'm gonna just go over both airports. So I've been to both airports. I connected at Narita to Osaka, as I mentioned earlier. It was a little interesting. So you go through customs. The customs are very. It's like funny. You go in the U.S. It's like. I don't know if the word prison's all right, but it feels like some of those movies. It's at least you're not taking off your clothes, but it's like bags. It's like it's long lines. You have the Beagle Patrol wandering around, and you can't pet them. Passport, ask if you bring anything in, and cookies and stuff, which I understand. When I went to Japan, it's like, especially because I went through security again, because it said you had to go through customs and go through security again. Like you don't have to take off your shoes or belt. It's just like very casual, and all like very polite and smiling. While in the U.S., it's like shoes off, belt off, everything goes in the bin. They're almost like yelling at you. It's like next, right there. They're like all polite and quiet, and I wouldn't say quiet, but not yelling in your face. So, definitely a stark contrast to cultures and staff. Oh, but anyway, and what's interesting about the domestic flight was we didn't have a gate. It was like on the tarmac, so we had to go go on the bottom. Basically you kind of go into like a basement waiting area. Kind of I would say like a bus stop, but like those airports where you're kind of like on the ground level and not like elevated above the ground. Like when you had a typical gate for like a 737 or Airbus 320. So you basically kind of have to, and look, it's like a little there was like a little restaurant shop there, so something to kill a little time, and bathrooms, your typical amenities of a little waiting area. Since I was with a group, I couldn't really go explore. That'd be like one of the times where I had 3 hours later, I'm going to go explore the airport, But when I got to the airport, I was able to go use the ATM and stuff, and I know about the amenities there very well, very nice. Good airport. And then we flew out of Haneda. That's kind of where my journey when I went back to the U.S. Now, let me get let's get this going real quick. Runway 22. Let's see what that one is real quick. I'm pulling that up. We will acknowledge. Better may not be another flyover. I'm going to be upset. I hate when that happens. 22. We can just zoom in here. Oh, but anyway, saying, so yeah, this is kind of, I'm going to say it's this one. They usually put you, yep. Yeah, and there's the airport. Actually, we're going to fly over it because my runway be there. Oh, actually, no, we'll be a little safer. Oh, this is a handcrafted airport, so it's quite nice. But anyway, so saying, so yeah, we flew out of, but I was out of the international terminal, so I've not been in Terminal 1 and 2, the domestic portions. But man, Hanada's really nice. Very modern, very spacious, like the very wide open, kind of like atrium. That's what I was saying. Sorry. Like a big atrium for the check-in areas. Very efficient. Security is very nice. I definitely actually in Narita from what I've seen, I put Narita, Haneda. Okay. I definitely put Haneda, Hong Kong, and Narita as some of the best airports I've flown through. Like up there with Munich, in my opinion. And obviously I didn't. I had a little breakfast there, but a lot of nice shops, great duty-free shops. They had like tons of stuff from like the flavor, the various flavor Kit Kats, whiskey. Obviously they always have the cigarette stuff and Chivas Regal, Scotch, which you can get anywhere on the planet. So what's the point? But it was good to get like more of the Suntory whiskey that I wanted that I cannot find in the U.S. So, and they also, of course, like being a nice airport, they got, let's slow that down. Very nice, like the rich brands and stuff. Oh, we're coming a little hot. There we go. Slow that baby down. So a very nice minor airport. You can't see it. It's already getting kind of busy. Now, this is a lot of traffic. The times are obviously. There's Ariane and Japan Airlines. I'm assuming right now it's mostly domestic traffic because I think it's about mid-morning now. But I could be wrong. RJTT. Yeah, I'm not familiar with those are. That code. At least it's clear. Yeah, let's keep it third person. We can get rid of this. But yeah, very good airport. And as I say, you can't go wrong with either. Just got to look at the times, transportation options, and so forth. They're both great. They're both huge. I mean, you just saw I flew over this. I didn't fly over this much, but you can just get a perspective how big it is. Now look at that. Not a bad landing. That was a little rough. Let's just be honest. Yeah, now I'm on another runner. All right. Yeah, we'll do a parking. Why not? Actually, let's see if we can go to a gate. We'll hold right here. Tokyo ground 122. Let's do a taxi to the gate. I just like doing this. It's just kind of fun to do. A way to to finish the video. Oh, good. They always give me that. Hold on. I'm going to acknowledge this and see if I can request a gate over here. They always do this. Anytime I fly in this airport, these planes, they give me a taxi gate on the opposite side. And it's not even a gate. It's like next to a shed. I mean, I don't want that. Hey, where's... Don't tell me. Can I not change it? Well, you know what? I'm going to say screw you guys. I'm going to go park where I want to park. Because I want to get close to the new terminal over here. I think this is the international terminal over here now, actually. Yeah, they Terminal 1 2 is over there, and then they built the international over here. Because this looks very familiar. I'm pretty sure this is the international. Yeah, because I know when I look at the map, it looks different compared to the... Oh, man. Struggling driving this on the taxiway. But yeah, let's get a little close. Isn't that cool? Look at that. I'll probably end the video around here if I did want to at least drive around this real quick. Ooh. Yeah, so... I think we'll park here. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We actually made it to each airport. Nice, beautiful morning, and my, playing God mode and with weather today. And you kind of see this is the... Actually, real quick, you know what? Actually, let's end this not yet. Let's do this, because we can do this. There we go. Let's just take a look at this airport. There we go. First of all, the details are incredible. Yeah. I'm pretty sure this is an international terminal. Yeah, it is. I can tell. This is the atrium over here, I believe. Let's go over this airport real quick. I'm trying to go as fast as I can with this controller. Wow, I just want to get this. This is just incredible with this detail. One thing I think they may still have, They used to have like, oh, not watchtowers, but kind of like areas like you can go and watch planes land and stuff. I do want to say may still have it over here, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, this is the international terminal, so I'll level check one last time, but I'm very, very positive this is the international terminal. Oh boy. Haneda Airport. We'll do a map. Images. Yeah, this is Terminal 3. This is International. There's a tram underneath it, I believe, that connects the two. And then 1 and 2. Now, it's funny. The original terminal was actually in this spot, roughly, which they tore down. And then, obviously, they built this by 2010. All right. Fortunately, this is not moving very fast. We'll probably leave it here. Just kind of, but yeah, this is the terminal. I believe it was coming out of this region because I remember kind of shopping and going through this other part. It's not super long, but it's big. It's a good size, a lot of good shops and stuff. I believe each of the major hubs got like ANA in Japan's got a lounge there, but also they got them over here because this is their domestic hub. And you kind of see where all the planes are coming at right now, all domestic. Over here, it's very quiet. I can't tell if these park planes are actually like legitimately parked there right now, but I know when they're like about to take off or show up, then you will see that. So, and I put in the livery pack, so you may see some. Yeah, there's Virgin. There's Air Ibia. At least that kind of makes sense where it's at. Is that Frontier? Yeah, it's Frontier, and they're all backwards for some reason. But anyway. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Decided to extend this a little more. Enjoy the little airport view of where I've flown in and out of this airport. So I hope you guys have a good one and take care.